안녕하세요. Essential Korean K-쌤입니다. In the last episode, we learned the basic rules for future tense conjugation for regular verbs and a few irregular verbs, namely 디귿 irregular verbs, 리을 irregular verbs, and 비읍 irregular verbs. Today's episode will continue our journey with the future tense and is divided into three parts. 1. Discussion on the difference between the future tense form and the present tense form when action verbs are used to describe future events. 2. Different meanings of the future tense form for descriptive verbs. And 3. See how these two key lesson points are at work in conversation with a few situational examples. Let's get right into it so you see what I mean. First, action verbs. Let's first visit our discussion on the meaning of the Korean present tense form, as it is relevant to our discussion on the meaning of the future tense form. You'll recall that in episode 35, we learned that the Korean present tense form of action verbs can express a few things. First, it can be a command telling someone to perform a certain action. Second, it can express habitual actions. Third, it can express actions in progress at the moment. And lastly, it can express actions that will take place in near future, which is the most relevant usage for today's episode. For example, the sentence 공부해요 can mean one of these, depending on the context. 1. Please study, a command or imperative. 2. I study, a habitual action. 3. I am studying now, a present progressive action. 4. I'll study in the future. The natural question that comes out of this is, what is the difference between the present tense form used to express future actions, like 공부해요, and the future tense form used to express future actions that we covered the last episode, which in this case would be 공부할 거예요. Here's how I would summarize the difference. When compared to future actions expressed in the present tense form, future actions described in the future tense form explicitly bear a marked futureness, emphasizing or highlighting that the action in discussion is taking place in the future. Here's an example. Let's say you want to ask your colleague when Ted, a counterpart in the Chicago office, is coming to Korea. You can say, 테드 씨는 언제 한국에 와요? Using the simple present tense form of the verb to come, 오다. Or you can use the future tense form of the verb 오다 and ask, 테드 씨는 언제 한국에 올 거예요? 테드 씨는 언제 한국에 올 거예요? In the first form with the present tense form 와요, the futureness is not obviously marked in the verb itself. This makes it seem like the time of Ted's visit is the focal point of the sentence, rather than the fact that his visit is in the future. Native speakers may have the tendency to use the present tense form when action feels closer in the future. On the other hand, in the second form with the future tense form, 올 거예요, the futureness is clearly marked with the 리을 거예요, and thus emphasizes the point that Ted's visit is in the future. A native speaker may use this if they feel the action is further away in the future. All this is very technical. A good framework to have when choosing which form to use is to consider 1. How important the futureness of an action is, and 2. How close an action is to take place. We'll explain this in more depth in the situational examples. Moving on to the second part of today's lesson on descriptive verbs, the verbs which, generally speaking, describe states of being. Such verbs are 좋다, to be good, 바쁘다, to be busy, 예쁘다, to be pretty, 시원하다, to be cool, and more. With descriptive verbs, the future tense form can be used 1, to describe a state that will happen in the future. And 2, to indicate the speaker's conjecture about the present state. For example, you believe it will be cold in Seoul tomorrow, so you say 서울 내일 추울 거예요. 서울, Seoul, 내일, tomorrow, 추울 거예요, will be cold. The informal polite future tense form of the verb 춥다, a pub irregular verb to be cold. 내일 추울 거예요. It will be cold tomorrow. On the other hand, you are in Hawaii now and talking to a Korean colleague who's headed to Seoul. Knowing the climate of Korea, you can warn him it's probably cold in Seoul now, with the same future tense form used to tell the future state in the previous example. Thus, you say, 서울 지금 추울 거예요. 서울, Seoul, 지금, now, 추울 거예요, which is pronounced 추울 거예요, which in this context would mean is probably cold. 서울 지금 추울 거예요. Seoul now is probably cold. Let's practice the 2 sentences. First, let's tell your colleague that Seoul will be cold tomorrow. Repeat after me. 서울 내일 추울 거예요, pronounced 거예요. 서울 내일 추울 거예요. 서울 내일 추울 거예요. Great. Let's now imagine ourselves somewhere really nice in Hawaii in the middle of December. Telling your colleague headed on a business trip to Seoul that it's probably cold in Seoul now, so he can make sure to pack his coat. Repeat after me to tell Seoul is now probably cold. 서울 지금 추울 거예요, pronounced 거예요. 서울 지금 추울 거예요. 서울 지금 추울 거예요. Let's do one more descriptive verb, a simple verb 바쁘다, to be busy. Imagine your colleague wants to schedule a meeting with the team leader tomorrow. Knowing the team leader will be busy tomorrow, you tell your colleague she'll be busy tomorrow. 팀장님 내일 바쁠 거예요. 팀장님, the team leader, 내일, tomorrow, 바쁠 거예요, pronounced 바쁠 거예요, will be busy, the informal future tense form of 바쁘다, to be busy. In another context where you are not 100% sure that the team leader is busy and are making an educated guess, you'll use the verb in the future tense the same way. Thus, to say the team leader is probably busy now in Korean, it's 팀장님 지금 바쁠 거예요. 팀장님, the team leader, 지금, now, 바쁠 거예요, which is the informal polite future tense form carrying the meaning is probably busy. 팀장님 지금 바쁠 거예요. The team leader is probably busy. Let's practice the 2 sentences with 바쁠 거예요, pronounced 바쁠 거예요, each in a different context. Imagine telling your colleague who wants to schedule a meeting with the team leader tomorrow that she'll be busy. I'll say the English cues before the Korean. Please repeat after me. The team leader, 팀장님, tomorrow, 내일, will be busy, 바쁠 거예요. 팀장님, 내일 바쁠 거예요. 팀장님, 내일 바쁠 거예요. Very nice. Now, in the second situation, imagine you telling your colleague who wants to go see the team leader now that the team leader is probably busy now. The team leader, 팀장님, now, 지금, is probably busy. 바쁠 거예요. 팀장님, 지금 바쁠 거예요. 팀장님, 지금 바쁠 거예요. Good job, everyone. Now on to the third part of our lesson today, situational example. Let's expand our practice with one more situation in which we practice a few sentences. Imagine you and your colleagues are having drinks after work. A recent report which has been circulating among all team members to review came up in the conversation, and your colleague asks if you've reviewed it with this question. 그 리포트 봤어요? Where 그 리포트 means that report, and 봤어요 is the past tense form of the verb 보다, which means to see, to look, or to review. Given that the question seems to be laced with an expectation and assumption that you've looked at the report, how would you answer this question if you haven't looked at the report yet and will do it tomorrow? Yes, you could say, 아니요, 아직 안 봤어요. No, I haven't reviewed it yet. 내일 볼 거예요. I will review it tomorrow. Note that 볼 거예요, the future tense form is used here, although his review takes place in the very near future. This is because the speaker is contrasting the colleague's assumption that reviewing of the report already took place with the reality that no, the review will take place in the future. And the speaker would like to emphasize the future aspect of the action. Please repeat after me to answer the question. 그 리포트 봤어요? By saying, no, I haven't reviewed it yet. I will review it tomorrow. I'll give you the English cues before the Korean in the first round. No, 아니요, yet, 아직, have not reviewed, 안 봤어요. Tomorrow, 내일, will review or will look. 볼 거예요, pronounced 볼 거예요. 아니요, 아직, 안 봤어요. 내일, 볼 거예요. 아니요, 아직 안 봤어요. 내일 볼 거예요. 아니요, 아직 안 봤어요. 내일 볼 거예요. Very good. Now, one of your colleagues is asking everyone if they'll have chicken for 안주, which refers to the food accompanying alcoholic beverages. You're not feeling well though, and have no appetite, so you don't want them to include you when deciding how much chicken 안주 to order. How would you do that? Yes, you could simply say you will not eat using the future tense form. 저는 치킨 안 먹을 거예요, meaning I will not eat the chicken. You also want to add you'll just drink beer by saying 그냥 맥주만 마실 거예요. Repeat after me to let your colleagues know you will not eat chicken and you will just have a beer. Again, I'll give you English cues before the Korean in the first round. As for I, 저는 chicken, will not eat, 안 먹을 거예요. Just, 그냥, beer followed by the particle 만, which means only. 맥주만, will drink, 마실 거예요. Pronounced 마실 거예요. 저는 치킨 안 먹을 거예요. 그냥 맥주만 마실 거예요. 저는 치킨 안 먹을 거예요. 그냥 맥주만 마실 거예요. 저는 치킨 안 먹을 거예요. 그냥 맥주만 마실 거예요. Excellent job. Some of you may be curious and ask, why not just 저는 치킨 안 먹어요 using the present tense form of the verb 먹다, to eat? It's not that you cannot say 저는 치킨 안 먹어요 instead of 저는 치킨 안 먹을 거예요. But just note that the present tense form can be interpreted as you being a person who doesn't eat chicken instead of you just not wanting to have chicken today. So, the clearest way to explain your point without ambiguity is to just say 저는 치킨 안 먹을 거예요. Clearly suggesting count me out instead of leaving any possible misinterpretation. But I again want to emphasize that you can use either sentence and tell you that native speakers wouldn't think this deeply and with this much detail. My point here is that I want these detailed explanation to deepen your understanding of the Korean language and its nuances so as to bring sticky points to some light. I would not want you to be hesitant with too many thoughts when you are actually engaged in conversation with native speakers. When you have the chance, forget about all the technical stuff. Put yourself out there and simply talk, never letting possible blank faces scare you. Okay, I'm finished with my mini lecture. Now, after having a good time with your lovely colleagues, you want to head out. In place of 안녕히 계세요, you can say a phrase which would correspond to see you tomorrow or I'll see you tomorrow. 내일 봐요. In this case, saying 내일 볼 거예요 instead of 내일 봐요 as a farewell will sound quite awkward. I thought about why the future tense is awkward in this scenario. It may be because the futureness marked in the verb 볼 거예요 alienates the present gathering by emphasizing the future, even though everyone is having a party and is indulging in the present moment. Thus, I feel 내일 봐요 successfully extends the present vibe. A quick anecdote on this. In the past, I heard from my son when he said goodbye to other people, 나중에 볼 거예요. I knew he meant to say, I'll see you later, directly translated from English using the future tense form. But when I heard it, I felt like he had transported everyone in the party to the future. So it felt a little off, even though I and probably everyone else present understood what he meant to say. Also, even though this isn't related to future tense, I have another anecdote to share on Eric and his journey navigating Korean at his international high school in Korea with fluent bilingual friends. He told me one day that he and a girl were fighting jokingly, and she apparently gave him a dirty look in math class. He said, 뭐 봐, trying to say, what are you looking at? Again, directly translating the English phrase into Korean. He told me that all his classmates started laughing around him, correcting him by saying, 야, 뭐 봐 아니고 뭘 봐, which means, hey, it's not 뭐 봐, it's 뭘 봐, which is a contraction of 뭐를 봐 with the object particle 를 emphasizing 뭐. When I heard this, I laughed because this was a case where the omission of the object particle 를, which happens often in colloquial speech, should not have happened, leading to a slightly awkward and imperfect way to engage in a fight in front of his classmates. This phrase frequently appears in Korean movies with thugs or gangsters in it. And I advise you not to use it with this particular intonation if you don't want to get in a fight with anyone. 뭘 봐? Or 뭘 봐? Or 뭘 봐요? Or 뭘 봐요? Okay, let's get back to the lesson. As a form of goodbye in Korean, you should use the present tense form of 보다 and 만나다 to meet, which are 봐요 and 만나요 respectively. Thus, you can say 내일 봐요 or 내일 만나요 for I'll see you tomorrow or I'll meet you tomorrow. Please repeat after me to say see you tomorrow. 내일 봐요. 내일 봐요. 내일 봐요. If you have to be the first one to leave due to a previous engagement to attend, you can let them know you'll leave first by saying 저 먼저 가요, which means I will leave ahead, or I'll leave first with 저, I, 먼저, ahead of others, or first, 가요, which in terms of the form is the present tense of the verb 가다, to go, but in terms of the meaning is will go. Imagine you're ready to leave and say 저 먼저 가요, meaning I'll leave ahead or I'll leave first. Imagine the situation. Put yourself in the position of the one who is leaving the gathering ahead of others and repeat after me. I, 저, ahead, 먼저, am going or am leaving or will leave, 가요. 저, 먼저, 가요. 저 먼저 가요. Very good. In this situation, if you said 저 먼저 갈 거예요 with a future tense verb 갈 거예요 or 갈 거예요, it will not be the ideal choice form of the verb because it may sound like you are alienating the others in the party and just state what you will do. Does this mean we have to use the present tense form in the situation? No, we don't have to. Besides using the present tense form for the situation, there is actually a different future form we can use without sounding abrupt or awkward. It is 게요, which is appropriate to use in this context. I will save the discussion and lesson on 게요 for the next episode, where I'll compare the future tense form 리을 거예요 or 을 거예요, the simple future tense, with the new future form 게요, and discuss how these two future tense forms are used differently. To summarize today's lesson, we learned 1. The difference in meaning between the future tense form of action verbs and the present tense form when it is used to describe future events. And 2. Different meanings of the future tense form of descriptive verbs. And 3. Practiced using them in situational examples. Please review the previous episodes, Future Tense Part 1, and this episode, Future Tense Part 2, get a good grasp on conjugation as well as using the informal polite future tense form in Korean. Then you'll be ready and set for another action-packed episode, Future Tense Part 3 next time. Until then, enjoy studying and learning Korean, everyone. I'll see you in next episode. 다음 에피소드에서 만나요. 안녕히 계세요.